Welcome. Today we're diving into something a bit darker. We're looking at the price of everything through a Machiavellian lens to understand the true limits of money.
You know, there's a line you were taught to believe in, a line between the things money can buy and the things it absolutely cannot. You were told it was sacred, right? That justice couldn't be purchased, that a place in line was just first come, first served, that certain doors only open to merit, never to a fat check. You believed in that line because, honestly, believing in it was comfortable. But here's the thing. While you believed in it, other people quietly learned how to walk straight through it.
Section 1. The line is a door, or the illusion of limits. You were probably told that markets have limits, that basic decency sits completely outside the reach of money, that there are rooms a wallet just can't enter, and verdicts a bribe can't bend. Well, a philosopher named Michael Sandel actually spent 30 years proving that this line is dissolving, that we've drifted from having a market to actually being one. And you know what? He's right about all of it. But he's lost. Every single round, in every country, for reasons he refuses to name.
So, here is what nobody told you. The people who run the world, they aren't richer than you because they work harder. They're not smarter than you in any way a test could measure, and they definitely didn't win because the playing field was fair. No, they won because they understood something you were trained to literally never look at. That the line between what money can and cannot buy isn't a wall at all. It's a door. And about 500 years ago, a Florentine clerk named Machiavelli wrote down exactly how to open it.
He gave us 5 principles, and trust me, they have never stopped working.
Principle 1. A ruler, Machiavelli wrote, must be both the lion and the fox. The lion frightens the wolves. The fox sees the trap. Think about it. For most of your life, the state was the lion. It stood right at that line and said, no, you cannot buy a jury, you cannot buy a kidney, you cannot buy a child. And the market? The market was the fox. Patient, quiet, just walking the fence at night, looking for a gap.
But then the lion laid down. Think about concierge medicine, paid surrogacy, paid blood, men literally hired by the hour to stand in line outside government buildings so the powerful never even have to wait. Apologies you can purchase, status you can just rent. But the fox didn't defeat the lion. You have to understand this because it is the whole secret. Nobody defeated the lion. We put it to sleep ourselves. One tax cut, one budget, one little shrug at a time. Every single time someone said, well, the market will handle it, the lion closed its eyes just a little bit more.
Which brings us to the second principle, love versus fear. Machiavelli asked, is it better to be loved or feared? And he gave the answer you were probably taught to find ugly. Be feared. Love, he said, is a fragile bond that men will break the absolute moment it costs them. But fear? Fear is a bond they cannot break. So seriously, ask yourself, why do you pay your taxes? Why do you show up to work on Monday? Why do you stop at a red light on a totally empty road at midnight? Civic duty runs on love. But the market? The market runs on fear. Don't pay, don't eat. And this is exactly why every single year the market takes more ground. It's not a fair fight. One side is built on the absolute strongest force in human nature. The other is built on the weakest.
Sandel, he wants to rebuild the love. He's out there trying to repair this fragile thing, while the unbreakable thing sits right beside it, working perfectly and asking for absolutely nothing.
Principle 3, Fortuna and virtue. Machiavelli had a specific name for fate. He called it Fortuna. Think of it like a river, totally calm for years, until the season it suddenly floods and drowns every single town that never bothered to build a wall. Half of life, he wrote, is just the river, but the other half is whether you built your walls in time. And that second half, the building, the sheer will, the absolute refusal to be carried away by the water, he called that virtue. So what happens when a society lets the market decide everything? It stops building. It basically hands its entire fate over to the river and calls it freedom. Whatever the water brings, the loneliness, the wealth gap, an entire generation that has literally never sat next to someone from a different tax bracket, it just accepts it. Why? Because it forgot it even had hands to build with. Now the rich watch the flood from glass boxes. The rest watch from the rain. Same city, completely different air. And you know, when the rich and the poor no longer stand in the same line, or ride the same train, or send their kids to the same classrooms, they stop sharing a country. They just share a mat.
Moving to principle 4, grief versus the wallet. This is arguably the coldest thing he ever wrote, and probably the truest. A man, he said, will forgive the death of his father faster than the loss of his money. Let that sink in for a second. Grief heals, but the wallet never forgets.
And this right here is why Sandel loses his arguments. Tell a parent that paying their child to read poisons the actual love of reading. They'll nod. They'll completely agree. But they're going to pay the child anyway. Because that report card comes in 6 weeks, and the love of reading is some distant, forever concept. Tell a city that selling its naming rights cheapens its history. They agree, but they take the money anyway, because the debt is real, and the dignity is just a feeling. The market always offers the exact same trade, something you can count, right now, against something you can only feel someday. A solid coin in the hand against a vague weight in the chest. And people do not trade money for meaning, they trade meaning for money. They always have. In fact, they're doing it right now while you watch this.
And finally, Principle 5, the armed prophet.
Machiavelli studied the men who actually changed history, the founders, the prophets, and he found one single thing they all shared. Every prophet who carried a weapon won. Every prophet who carried only words died. I mean, his own city literally burned a monk who tried to reform it with just sermons. The guy was brilliant, right about everything, but he was unarmed. So they lit the fire in the public square. Now, look at the man warning us today about the price of everything. What are his weapons? A book, a lecture, a nice documentary you watch and feel briefly wiser before the next video autoplays. Meanwhile, his opponents carry massive lobbying budgets. They have algorithms that know your weaknesses before you even feel them. They hire behavioral scientists to study the exact milliseconds your willpower breaks. They have compound interest, and they have time.
You see, this was never a fair fight. It's essentially a sermon against a machine. And the sermon, no matter how profoundly true it is, was always going to lose. Always. Until somebody actually hands the prophet a sword.
Waking the lion. The architecture of power. So here is the part you were never meant to hear.
That line we talked about, it's gone. It's been gone for years. At this point, the only people who still believe in it are the ones it was deliberately built to keep out. So, you have a choice. You can keep believing that some things are just simply not for sale, and you can keep losing to the people who figured out they always were. Or you can finally see the architecture for what it is. You can wake the lion. We need laws with teeth, you know? Not just feelings with hashtags. We have to make the laws countable, show people exactly what is being taken from them, and show it in the very same currency it's being taken with. We need to arm the prophet, because virtue without actual power, well, it's just a comforting story the powerful let you tell yourself. Sure, money cannot buy everything, but until you stop repeating that like a prayer and start actually using it like a plan, it is going to keep buying you.